If you think about what it takes to switch suppliers, not only is it the physical act of learning a new behavior, going somewhere else to buy the product or service, there's also a risk involved, isn't there? A risk that this new unknown supplier will not be as good as the old supplier. And so the challenger here always has to spend more than the incumbent does in order to keep the account. And because of that, the champion, the incumbent, has a natural built-in cost advantage against the challenging company. Anytime you have that cost advantage, you have the ability to kickstart that virtuous cycle that we just talked about. And so what Reichheld discovers is, if you think about the relationship not as a one-time sale, but think about it as an ongoing stream of sales, then what you can start to say is, the value of that account isn't a function of what they buy today. It's what they buy today and the next day and the next day and the next day and the next day. And once I do that, now I can start to justify spending a whole lot more to win the account in the first place. And I can also justify spending a little bit on some random act of kindness to show them that their business is important to me each and every day. All of a sudden, what we can start to say is, I can move some of those dollars I'm currently spending on things like newspaper ads and radio ads, and maybe what I can do is reallocate them to giving the customer better service, to giving the customer better packaging, to giving the customer something a big box store can't provide. We're going to give the customer something. We're going to give them an ad, or we're going to give them some meaningful service. And the beauty of this is that when you do it, not only do you get all of that original piece of business, but what Reichheld also discovered is what you get is a bigger share of the customer's wallet. Procter & Gamble made its fortune by showing retailers how they could make money by selling Tide for a price less than the cost they were paying Procter & Gamble. Why? Well, because the idea was razors and razor blades. You may lose money on Tide, but it'll draw the consumer into the store, and once they're in the store, you can sell them bread and milk and eggs and all of that other stuff, and you can make it all there. So the question becomes, if I've got the customer coming in now and buying from me today, what else can I be selling them at the same time? This is the reason why front of store has grown to be a third of most independent pharmacists' revenue. Right? It's not that we weren't making money on dispensing, but the notion was if you were in there, if you were waiting for your prescription to be filled, what else could you be buying at the same time? This is the reason why we are seeing the massive blurring of retail boundaries. Why it is that grocery stores now look a lot like mass merchandisers and vice versa. Why it is that in fact drugstores are starting to look so much like mass merchandisers. Loblaws sells clothing. Walmart sells groceries. And they're both selling drugs. Why? Because it's all predicated that sometimes it's not a question of selling more stuff to more customers. Sometimes it's a question of selling more things to the customers you already have. And the beautiful thing, of course, is when you do this, what happens? Well, now you've still got the fixed cost of reaching out to that customer in the first place. You've still got the fixed cost of maintaining their information. But because you're now spreading all of those costs over more sales, the result is you've got a lower cost of servicing the account. This comes with its own built-in means of financing the ability to give better service, the ability to give lower prices. And when you start to do these little incidental random acts of kindness that make the customer stand up and take note of you, that make you stand out from everybody else, you now become the topic of discussion. People talk about you, and you get referral business. And the longer this goes on, not only do you get referral business, but now what you also get is a price premium that comes just from the fact that people are too damn lazy to switch. And if you don't believe that, ask yourself this question. How much does your bank have to upset you before you'll move your account? Is it a 6-minute delay? 60-minute delay? 6-minute delay every day for 6 years? I mean, you start to understand, my goodness, think of what I got to do if I have to move my account. Why wouldn't I have the same regret in moving my drug records? Why wouldn't I have the same regret in drifting over to a new healthcare supplier? When you put all of this together, what you discover is this. If I can increase my sales volume by 1% through new customer acquisition, my profitability goes up 3.3%. But if I can do this through an improvement in customer loyalty, the payoff is something between 7 and 19%, depending upon industry. That's more than I get from volume, more than I get from cost, more even than I get from low price. Why? Because when I get it with customer loyalty, I'm firing on all cylinders. I'm getting the ongoing stream of sales. I'm getting the bigger share of the customer's wallet. I'm getting referral business. I'm getting a lower cost of servicing the account, and I'm getting the premium price that comes from customer inertia. I am winning the game on all fronts. And the most significant thing to me about this in the context of the pharmacy business, you'll notice that as we go from providing a product to providing a pure service, the rewards to customer loyalty actually increase. Why? Because what you're selling is intangible. You can't see it, you can't feel it, you can't taste it, and as a consequence, nothing communicates quality better than experience. The trick here is to realize that when you have this kind of a relationship, you don't make your relationship grow by simply doing the same things on day 10 that you did on day 1. If all you're doing is the same things over and over again, the relationship actually becomes a breeding ground for novelty-seeking behavior. I'm going to go somewhere else just because I'm looking for something different. Interesting to me, whether you read Richard Reichheld on business relationships or Dr. Phil on human relationships, they all tell you the same thing. Relationships that grow are relationships which over time empower each individual to do something they could not do on a first date. Think of it. I take my wife to the movies these days. What do? We get in the car, we drive to the theater, we pull up to the curb, I say, why don't you go stand in line? I'm going to go park. We come back, we walk into the theater, the concession stand looms. Do I ask if she'd like a refreshment? Of course not. Why not? Because I already know. She wants popcorn, no butter, no soft drink. She'll sip on mine. So I go up to the concession stand. She goes into the movie theater. Now this may sound like I'm really being ignorant. Like what an obnoxious male to treat my date that way. But if you ask the question, if it's raining out and I drop her off and I walk back 2 blocks from the parked car to the theater, who's wet and who's dry? She's dry, I'm wet. People are lined up behind her, meaning that dropping her off means we're going to get into the theater sooner. And when we walk into that theater and she peels off into the theater and I go up to the concession stand alone, she is always able to get great seats. And I asked her one day, I said, what are you doing? Are you arm wrestling the other women? And she said, no, there's nobody in the room. You know why there's nobody in the room? Because everybody else is there on a first date. And so all of those losers, they're up at the concession stand with me. They can't stand to be apart. Measure us by first date standards, I'm a bad date. But if you ask the question, have we found a way to re-engineer the buyer-seller relationship to make possible new streams of benefits we could never achieve on a first date? The answer is absolutely, positively. That's the game of loyalty, is to be able to amass a benefit stream based upon data, based upon experience, based upon knowledge that can never be assailed on a first date. Think of it. Who on a first date would turn to their date and say, get out, I'm going to go park? Who on their first date would say, get seats, I'm going to go up and I'll figure out what you want when I get there? It's not going to happen. You could only do this if you've been in the date for a long time.